Hello, my name is Andrew Yeager and I'll be going over Task 6.2, working with vectors. Now straight off the bat, the difference between an array and a vector. An array is of fixed size, so say we define an array of a size 4, then that's it. Throughout the program, there can only ever be 4 values within that array. Now a vector, on the other hand, is dynamic and can change size depending on the needs of the program. The con to that is it does utilize more memory, but well worth it in some regard. Now, starting from the top, we've created a couple of functions here. So the first one being a total length function, utilizing the names of vector, the vector. We're going to calculate the length of all the names within that. Now, going on from that, we've then got our index of, and what it's going to do, utilizing our named vector, we're going to calculate the index of a name that we provided, and it's going to return that. Next, we've got our shortest name. Utilizing the names vector again, it's going to calculate the shortest name in the list and return that result. And then we've defined our update name procedure, which will essentially allow us to, utilizing the names within the vector, update that and produce a new result. And print summary procedure, which essentially is our working horse. It's calling on all the functions that I just mentioned and displaying that to the user. And then, of course, we've got our main function, and this is where it all begins. Now, straight off the go, we're defining a vector called names, and that's what we're going to be using throughout the program. Now, what we're doing here, we're using the read integer function that we've used before, and we're passing the value that is defined. So how many names would you like to enter? And we're replacing that into names number as an integer. And what it's going to do is, using this for loop, we're going to use that integer that we've defined in here to know how many times to iterate through what we're going to be calling here. And what we're doing here is we're using the read string function that we've created. We're asking the user to enter a name, and using the pushback method, we're going to push that value, that integer, string, into the names vector, which we've got up here, that we've defined up here. Now, using the pushback method, and as I've mentioned here, it's always going to be pushed to the back of the vector. Sorry, just here. So each time read string is being called, it's using the pushback method, pushing the result into the names, and it's being pushed to the back of the vector. Then going on from that, we're going to call our print summary procedure, which does call all our functions that we've defined. We're going to update a couple of strings there, and then we're going to use print summary again to display the updates. So I'm going to base it off the print summary. We're going to go off the print summary procedure because that's, like I said, that's the working horse, and this is where we're making all our calls. So I'm going to get the program running. And like we'd expect, it's asking how many names we would like to enter. So I'm going to place 3. And what that's going to do is call what we've declared here. I'm going to go Andrew, John, and Caitlin. And that's going to be, it's going to ask 3 times. Now, this bit here, where it's displayed what we provided, is happening right here within our procedure, our print summary procedure. And how it's doing that is, because we've passed through the names vector, it's using the size of that to count how many times to iterate throughout our for loop. And each time that's happening, it's the I value is increasing from 0, and each time it's being placed into here, and it's printing out or displaying the name the value within the names vector at that point. And that's quite simple. That's all that's doing is producing that result there. Now, let's get into the actual program. We're going to, the first one we're calling is, alright, calculate and display the length of all the names in the list. And it's calling this function here, and it's displaying that to the user. So I'm going to go to the top there, where that function is being called, total length. Here we go, total length. What's happening here is we're passing our names value here. I'd like to mention I've also the result of calling that is just here, total length of all names, and it works out to be 17, and that magic is happening just over here. So we're defining a result integer. We're starting off being 0, and what we're doing here is we're going to update that result based off the given name that we provide. So you'll see what happens. So based off the size of the names in the list, to iterate for our for loop, we're going to place in the name string the value that's in the first call. So being the first call being 0, the first value is going to be Andrew. And that's going to be placed in the name just here. And what we're doing here is we're saying, alright, so within the string name, let's work out its length. Now what we're going to do is it's going to place it in result. It's going to update this integer here, and then increase it. So it's going to increase 0, which is in the result, but also update it, sum it up with this. So essentially, start again. It's using results value being 0 plus the name that we've defined here, the length of that. So being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 plus 0, and then it's going to store it back into result. And that's the use of these two here. And then that's going to iterate through based on the number, the size of that's been defined through the names vector. I hope that makes sense. And then that result, the final result, once it's gone through the whole for loop, is being returned and displayed back in our print summary. We're going to write line. So we're calling this function here, and once that process all happens, we're going to write that out onto the screen, and that's what we're seeing here. Total length of all names is 17. And then the next one being called is calculate and display the shortest name in the list. So again, we're calling our function here, passing through the names vector, and we're going to display that to the screen. So we're going up to the shortest names function. Alright, so we're defining our minimum straight from the beginning. And minimum is the name from here in the index of 0. So essentially that's the initial starting index to calculate index value to be used in the for loop. And this is where it happens. So like before, iterating through the number of times based off the size of our array. And what we're doing here, it's using the length, so the length method of the value in index I within the names vector. It's getting that length, and it's comparing the length of the minimum which we've defined here. And if that is the case, that value, I, now becomes the minimum and gets stored. And then it iterates through that. So essentially what's happening is It's trying to find the minimum length, and is comparing to the one before it. And then if it is smaller than the length before it, then minimum value gets updated. And then once it's gone through that, it returns the minimum. And as you can see here, it has calculated that the shortest name in the list is John. Alright, going back down to print summary, our next one is, what do we got here? The index for the name you've entered. So what we're doing here is we're calling the index of function using our names vector and displaying that to the screen. Here we go. So this one's a bit simpler. Essentially, we're utilizing the vector. It's asking the user to enter a name to return its index. It's storing it within username and iterating through the amount of times, which is defined by the size of our array. It's making a comparison. So if, I'll backtrack one a bit. For everything that's iterating through the if statement, it's always being converted through the lowercase method here. So that's just to allow, so say a user entered a string which is a combination of uppercase and lowercase, it's just going to convert that whole string into lowercase so it can make that direct comparison there. So back again, gone through the loop based off the size of our vector. If the name that we've defined within our read string here is the same as the name that is in the position within our names vector, if it's the same, then it does exist. Then it returns the value of the index within the names vector. If it doesn't exist, then it's just going to return -1. So going through that again, we're asking the user to enter a name to return its index. It's been stored in username. Then gone through our for loop, we're going to make sure everything's lowercase, and we're going to make that comparison between what the user entered to what's in our array based off the value of I at that given time within the loop. And if it exists, which we're asking just here, if it exists, return I, which is the value of that index. And then it breaks that loop. And this is where, so we haven't asked for it yet, but on our program here, so let's ask where the position of Caitlin is. And we're going to expect this to run through the function there. There we go. The index for the name you entered is 2. So the next one being called in our print summary. Sorry, correction, in our main, because it's already iterated through the print summary. It's gone through every step there, which was just here. Now what's being called is update name, which is passing through the names vector. And it's being passed to our procedure just here. So straight off the bat, we're asking in our update name procedure, we're going to ask the user enter a name to update. So that's being called based on our read string function just here, and then we're going to store that value within name. And then we're creating a Boolean value called found, and we're declaring that to be false, and that's going to be a default value for our for loop just down here. Now we come down to our loop. And what we're asking is go through this loop at least once, and then making it, and here's our condition. So, like the other ones, we've gone through a for loop based on the size of our array from here, saying at position at I value of 0. And because we've asked the user to enter a name to update, we're going to convert that to lowercase. So that's being converted to lowercase, this value here. Also, any values that are stored within our vector, which was being passed through here. What we're asking is essentially asking the user for a name, and if it's equal to the value within our array, then we're going to say, okay, we found what you're trying to update. Please enter a new name, and that's going to be placed into our vector in this position, which is at the position of the loop that we've made that match in. So essentially, if we found our name in index 0 or index 1, then that value there will be 1. It's going to update the name at position 1 to whatever we're asking for just here. And then when we're just going to display the result of that, and we're going to change our default value of found to be true, which we originally declared up here. And if that actually went through and processed right, it's going to break. And then it's going to end the condition here while not found. But on the other hand, if the value was not found, then it's going to ask the user to enter a value again. And this is the condition here. While this is not being answered, it's going to continue the loop. It's just going to keep continuing while the name is not found. So that's our update name procedure. So we've called our update name, then we're just going to call our print summary again, and that's just going to provide an update. So actually, I forgot to go through that within the code, so I've gone through our update name, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how the two lowercase is actually happening. So I've actually put in a couple of capitals here. So I'm going to update Andrew with a lowercase a, and because I've said two lowercase, I'm allowed to do that, and it's going to find it. There we go. Now it's going to ask me for an updated name. I'm just going to go Andy, and there we go. Andrew has been changed to Andy. The new updated list is Andy. And there you go. And then because we've called our print summary again, it's going to produce all the results, and there we go. And then I can then ask again, return the index of that name, of a name. So I'm going to say, all right, return the index of Andrew. There we go. That's it.